Buddy, this is Defeater of Souls, and today I'm looking at one of the games in the Dragon Quest Monsters franchise that I often skip over, that being Dragon Quest Monsters Caravan Heart. Now, the main reason why I usually skip over this is because it's a Japan exclusive game. As such, I have no legal way to be able to access this game. However, using a few slightly necessary methods, I have an English version of the game allowing me to play through it and figure out what it's really about. So, with all that said, let's take a look here at what we got in Dragon Quest Monsters Caravan Heart. So, right here, I have myself a nice little video. This, of course, is just gameplay footage. Right away, you can see I am Prince Kiefer, and I'm talking to my good friend Lewin. Lewin is an important main character, although he's not the main character. He will be your main source of being able to access a lot of the features in the game. For example, in order to move around in the overworld, you'll have to talk to Lewin. It's something that's also important to mention here is that there is no main hub. The only one you have is the camp, which can be moved using Lewin, of course. Caravan's also important. He helps you with party formation. One of the things you might be able to notice right off the gate is that the base camp is actually random every time, depending on where you stop and where you place it. You can't leave, of course, without Lewin. Another thing you might notice is how slow the game is. This is something I admit is a problem with a lot of Dragon Quest Monsters games, especially the early ones, is that they're rather slow, so when you're emulating them, it's really easy in order to actually just speed them up a bit. This here is your breeding menu. What you're going to do here is, this is where you're going to access the likes of all the monsters and fuse the hearts with them. I'll explain that after this recording. The monster reference is going to show it, and you're going to notice right away that there is an incredibly small amount of classes here, only 7, and they're all really weird. Now, slime makes sense, dragon makes sense. However, you have both nature and beast, then you have material, devil, and then what appears to be some sort of angel or immaterial family. I don't even know, but they all obviously have their own unique whatevers. I haven't 100%ed this game, and I probably won't. But as you can see, it's got a rather interesting selection of monsters. Another thing to mention is that the monsters that I have in my party, I did not name. You're actually given monsters, and then when you upgrade them with their hearts, their name stays the same. Now, I don't remember if there's an option to change the names or not, but if there is, I can't access it. So now we got Gavin here. He has the formation. So formation works where you have 3 wagons by the time you get to the end of the game. Each one's gonna have a max weight depending on the monster who's holding it and a few other things. You can see right away that you can have human people packed onto these wagons until it matches up with the weight. So for example, a few of my guys had weights of 3 or 4, which meant less of them could fit on a wagon, where if I had guys with lower weights of 1 or 2, I'd be able to fill up an entire wagon. Now these guys are important in battle because what happens is it's not just your monsters attacking. Every time you battle, it's actually going to cycle through these members of the wagon. It's going to go down the line, and basically they're going to do their unique action along with the monster's action. Now, I am in a low-leveled area, so I kind of can't show this off as well as I can, but you can see at the front of one of my wagons, one of my guys used the move that got me extra gold at the start of the battle. Oh, yeah. So, once again, I'm in an early game area, so all the enemies will get finished off pretty fast. In the top right corner, there's an F along with numbers. This is a food marker. Due to the way this game's mechanics are set up, there's actually a food limit in this game, where you have to have food in order to travel, otherwise your monsters will be damaged while you're moving. Another thing to mention here is that you can tell the difference between a town and a dungeon based on whether or not you have that food icon. So for example, when I enter this dungeon, you can see once again I have the wagons trailing me, and I have the food icon in the top right corner, along with all these weak monsters. One last thing probably worth mentioning here is that this game is not a very good predecessor to, in my opinion, to these Dragon Quest Monsters games that came before it. Not only is it slow, but it just feels weird. You can see that there's not really much to do left in the game. After you beat the game, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of post-game content. A few extra things here. You can see that, once again, there's limited skills for each party member. You have to move the camp, of course, to set the camp. I have the tech speed on the fastest, and you can still see it's a slow game. And, of course, I did beat the game. I have over 50 hours on it, which, may or may not be due to the fact that it's very slow, and it took me a while to get from place to place, as you can see. That's pretty much all I got with the footage of the game. So with that aside, let's talk about how the game actually is. First thing to notice is that the way they changed the breeding mechanics in this game are just weird. I didn't really show it off too well, but what you gotta do is you gotta take one of your monsters, and then you're gonna go up to our good person at the tent, and you're gonna tell him you want to breed. It's not actually breeding, it's something different, but it's not the same thing. After you conjoin these monsters, you reform them, you actually will get the same monster with but it's a different monster. It has the same name, and it takes stats over and moves over from its previous iteration, but it's completely different. It's weird. So you'll take two hearts and you'll fuse them together. In fact, I'll actually show you a clip. I, of course, having beaten the game, don't mind doing this. I'll show you, what it's like to fuse some of these monsters. So, alright, so as you can see here, I'm in the fusion tent, and if you go and talk to Foz, you can do some reformations. We will take my level 4 Venasu, who is currently a Halo Slime, and we're just going to reform them. So I have a bunch of hearts here on the left. Similar to previous games, it doesn't matter which order you put them, and also on the bottom you'll be able to see what skills they'll learn if you fuse them together. So if I take this Demon Monk, and I decide to fuse it with, let's say, something simple like a Grand Shark, I'll get a Change-In. That would be guaranteed to be good, but something you gotta pay attention is that your monsters have weight too. So you can see at the bottom, if I do this, I'd have to kick somebody off my team, because it'd be too high of a level. Now, I don't know if I want to do that or not, so it's important that I think about what I'm going to do. Now, in this case, I don't really care, so we're going to go ahead and do this and get us a Change-In. So, we'll start the reformation, and then you'll get this nice little animation where you get your new demon, new monster. Now you see, once you go over the weight limit, you gotta fix it, but that's quite literally it. It'll reset their level, but it'll keep their stats, which means as they level up, they'll gain more stats. Now, this can be used for better or for worse, depending on whatever you believe. We're gonna have to remove this merchant, and that's pretty much how the fusing works, and it's completely different from other games, and it requires more materials and a lot more luck than some of the other games in the series. One other thing I want to mention is the story. Now, of course, Dragon Quest Monsters isn't big around its story. Of course, the game that does the story the best is the newest release of Dark Prince, but that's mostly on account of the fact that they're borrowing a lot of the story from Dragon Quest IV. This game actually takes a lot of inspiration from Dragon Quest III. It takes place in the world of Alefgard, which was the location, I do believe, of the first 3 Dragon Quest games in the series, and it has Prince Kiefer, who was a side character in Dragon Quest VII, which has a lot of similarities to how they did things in Dragon Quest Monsters, the original, with Terry being a character from 6, who goes to another world. What you're doing is you're looking for the Orbs of Lodo for the Master of Illusion in order to send Prince Kiefer home. Now, of course, if you don't know, Lodo is the name used in the Game Boy Advance translations of the Dragon Quest III games on the Game Boy Advance. Since Erdrick was too much, they replaced all instances of Erdrick in those games with Lodo, since it was less characters and able to fit. Which means in this game, which is also on the Game Boy Advance, to keep up that continuity, it's called the Orbs of Lodo. After you collect all of them, you give them to the Master Illusions. A few other things happen, and that's pretty much it. So, the story's nothing special, but you're not playing these games for the stories, you're playing them for the interesting mechanics. Now, what does this game do right? Well, it is a monsters game, and it is, of course, not as fun, but still fun to breed monsters together and see what kind of combinations you can get. The mix with the wagons being introduced in the stamina and the food meter, creates an interesting aspect where you gotta try and balance survival with the game. Now, this is just, in my opinion, I think it was a decent idea, but it definitely could have been expanded on to something much better. Now, if there was a Dragon Quest Monsters game in the future where you're stuck in the wild and you literally have to survive and like catch these monsters, that would be awesome. But of course, that's not what this game is. It just has a food meter and a wagon and a movable base camp. The movable base camp is actually a con. It may seem like a pro because you can always put it within reach, but it takes more food to travel with a camp, especially across more rough terrains like mountainous areas. Which means that if you want to have the camp near you, you got to put in a lot of effort. And if you use something like a Chimera Wing in order to transport back, or the spell Zoom, you're going to end up going farther away from your destination just so you can move it back. That is incredibly annoying in my opinion. I also feel like the humans generally have a bigger impact on the game than the monsters themselves. Now, of course, yes, you can breed the monsters and you can customize the wagons to do whatever you want, but the humans are ultimately going to have a bigger impact in the battle. For every monster, you could have anywhere from 1 to 4 humans who will be doing the same things over and over again with practically no control over them. You put a warrior in a wagon, he's only going to attack every time it's his turn. And really, sometimes you don't want to attack because the enemy is able to reflect attacks, or they have high defense, and that's a con for me. So I guess the question is, at the end of this video, whether or not this game is worth playing. And I don't know what exactly the answer is. If you are like me and you love the Dragon Quest Monsters series, and it seems interesting to mix it with this unique genre of the survival with the wagon and whatnot, you can go ahead and give it a shot. Emulating it is probably your best bet. But if you don't want to do that, there are websites where you can buy an English fan translation and play it on the actual hardware of the Game Boy Advance. It's about $15-16 wherever I saw it last. But if you are only slightly interested in the content of this channel, and this just doesn't look like fun because it's too slow or the mechanics seem off, then I wouldn't play it. Like, if you're just a casual fan, like, I've played one Dragon Quest Monsters game, this probably isn't the game for you. It's definitely not the best game in the series. It is probably around the same area as Joker. It was a decent game, but really, I would not play it again unless I really had a good reason. Like if I wanted to get content for a YouTube channel. So, with that all being said, with our meh review of the Caravan Heart game, this has been Defeater of Souls. If you like my Dragon Quest Monsters content, which is incredibly specific and only is done on this incredibly small sub-series of one of the most popular gaming franchises of all time, then you should definitely subscribe. And if you like the video, that's what the like button's for. And of course, if you've played the game, please let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with anything I've said. I would be perfectly fine if you disagreed with everything I said. If you thought the fusion mechanic was novel and all that, please correct me in the comments. I don't mind. That all being said, this has been Defeater of Souls.